Now, in order to be able to use Hibernate, like we said before, we need to have a Hibernate configuration file, which is an XML file. You can also do it as a properties file, or you can do it programmatically. In most cases, most developers will use an XML file because that's the most flexible and it's very descriptive. So we're going to go ahead and use an XML file. We're going to change our perspective now to this Hibernate perspective. And now you can see that there's this Hibernate section over here. And this actually has some interesting things that we'll take a little bit of a look at later. We're not going to focus too much on this since we're more concerned with Hibernate itself and not the Eclipse plugin, but there is an HQL editor for the Hibernate query language as well as a criteria editor, which can be very useful. What we're going to do though is we're going to click on this add configuration, and from here we're going to set up our configuration. We're going to set our Hibernate version to 4. We're going to choose our project, which is Protein Tracker. And then for our database connection, we're going to say Hibernate configured connection. We could have also said JPA, but remember we're going to be doing things the Hibernate way. Now I said we could use a property file or a configuration file. We're going to go ahead and use the configuration file. So we'll need to create a new config.xml. So let's go ahead and say create new. And then we'll click next. And we'll need to fill out this configuration file. So we're going to go ahead and leave the session factory name blank for now. We're going to choose our database dialect, which is going to be MySQL. We're just going to do the generic MySQL one. For our driver class, we're going to use this com.mysql.jdbc driver. Our connection URL is basically going to be our host name and then our port. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to put localhost and then 3306, and we're going to need to specify a default schema to use. So we're going to flip over to MySQL real quick and create a database for our application. So I'm going to go ahead and run MySQL Workbench. If you just search for MySQL under Start or under your programs, you should find MySQL Workbench. And we're going to go to our local instance. And we need to put in our root password. And then you can see that we already have some databases here, some schemas basically that will hold our information. But we're going to go ahead and create a new schema. So I'm just going to go ahead and click here to create a new schema. We're going to call this one protein_tracker. We're going to leave everything default. And we'll click apply and finish. So now we have this protein tracker schema. We don't have any tables or anything in here, but that's fine for now. So now we can go back over here, and for default schema, we're going to have protein_tracker. We won't have a default catalog. We have a username, which is app user. And remember, our password is app user as well. Then I'm going to click finish. So now we have our main configuration file. I'm going to go ahead and click apply and then OK. And we'll minimize this over here so we can see this a little bit better. What we're looking at now is this hibernate.cfg.xml file. Now you could manually create this, but we sped things up a little bit by using these Eclipse tools. If you look at the source, this is basically what we have, is all of this configuration set up as properties for our session factory. And part of the nice thing about using these tools in Eclipse's plugin is that we can just go here to Session Factory and we can modify a lot of these things directly inside of here. We can put stuff for Hibernate. For example, we want to set this show SQL to true because this will make it so we can see our SQL that's being generated, which will help us when we're learning about Hibernate. It's useful to see what SQL is actually being generated. There's a bunch of different options here that you can take a look at. But for the most part, we're going to be fine with what we have for now. When we create our mapping file, we'll actually add the mappings here because Hibernate needs to know where each mapping file is. But for now, this should work. The next thing that we're going to do is to basically test out this configuration by trying to create an instance of our session factory.